My wife cheated and called it just fun. I divorced her, and now she's desperate to get me back. Hey Reddit. Sarah and I had been together for 10 years, married for 7. We met in college, back when everything felt new and exciting. She was the kind of person who could walk into a room and instantly make everyone laugh. She had this energy about her that made you feel like you were the only person in the world when she was talking to you. I was hooked from the start. We moved in together right after graduation. At the time, we were both struggling to find jobs in our fields, so we supported each other through the rough patches. I remember how we used to stay up late, lying in bed, talking about our dreams. She wanted to travel the world, and I wanted to build something stable, something we could rely on. We promised each other that no matter what, we'd always be a team. When I proposed to her, I thought it was the happiest day of my life. She cried, hugged me, and told me she couldn't wait to spend forever with me. Our wedding was small but perfect. I remember standing at the altar, watching her walk toward me, thinking I was the luckiest man alive. For years, I believed we were happy. We had inside jokes, movie nights, road trips, and lazy Sundays. We supported each other through job changes, family issues, and personal struggles. I thought we were solid. But looking back, I can see the cracks that were already forming long before that night. Sarah had started staying out later, going out with her coworkers more often. At first, I didn't think much of it. I trusted her completely. If she said she was out with friends, I believed her. If she came home late, I assumed she was just having fun and lost track of time. I never once thought she was capable of betraying me. Then came that night. It was a regular weekday. Nothing special. I had finished work early and decided to surprise Sarah with dinner. I picked up sushi from the place we had our first date and even grabbed a bottle of her favorite wine. I wanted to do something nice for her, to remind her how much I loved her. When I got home, something felt off. The house was too quiet. Normally, Sarah would have music playing, a show on, or be on the phone with one of her friends. But that night, silence. I set the food down and called out her name. No answer. That's when I heard it. A noise. A voice. A man's voice. My stomach dropped. My hands started shaking. I walked toward our bedroom, my heart pounding harder with every step. The door was slightly open. As I got closer, I could hear them clearly now, soft whispers, a laugh, and then a moan. My whole body went cold. I pushed the door open. And there she was. My wife. The woman I had loved for a decade. In our bed. With another man. Everything after that was a blur. I remember the guy scrambling to grab his clothes, looking at me like a deer caught in headlights. I remember Sarah gasping, wrapping the sheets around herself, as if covering up now made any difference. But the thing I remember most clearly? The way she looked at me. No shame. No guilt. Just annoyance. Like I was interrupting something. I don't know how long I stood there. It felt like time had stopped. I couldn't speak. Couldn't move. It was like my brain refused to process what I was seeing. Sarah was the first to break the silence. Wait, this isn't what it looks like. That snapped me out of it. I let out a bitter laugh because what else was I supposed to do? What other explanation was there? The guy, some random stranger, someone I had never seen before, mumbled something about not knowing she was married and bolted out of the room. Coward. Sarah tried to reach for me, but I stepped back. It's not a big deal, she said, like she was explaining why she forgot to take out the trash. It was just fun. It didn't mean anything. Just fun. I think that hurt more than the cheating itself. I didn't yell. Didn't cry. I just looked at her, feeling this cold, empty numbness settle over me. We're done, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She panicked. She started crying, begging me to talk to her, to let her explain. She said it was just a stupid mistake, that she loved me, that she didn't want to lose me. But I was already gone. That night, I packed a bag and left. I stayed at my best friend's house while I figured out what to do next. The next day, I filed for divorce. Sarah didn't take it well. At first, she acted like she was in shock, like she never thought I would actually leave. She kept calling, texting, showing up at my friend's place. She swore she would do anything to fix things. Then came the anger. She accused me of overreacting, of throwing away our marriage over one little mistake. She said we could get past this if I would just listen to her. I didn't listen. I moved forward with the divorce. The process was brutal. She fought it at first, trying to convince me to go to therapy, to work things out. When I refused, she turned petty. She tried to drag things out, make it as difficult as possible. But in the end, it didn't matter. A few months later, The divorce was finalized. I thought that was the end. I thought I could finally move on. I was wrong. Sarah started showing up everywhere. At my work. At my gym. At the coffee shop I went to every morning. She would cry, beg me to take her back, say she realized too late how much she loved me. She sent long messages, pouring her heart out, telling me she had been in therapy, trying to understand why she did what she did. She said she didn't even recognize herself anymore, that she would do anything to prove to me that she was a better person now. I ignored her. Then she started using mutual friends to get to me. They would text me, saying she was a wreck, that she wasn't eating, that she was miserable without me. That I should at least hear her out. A small part of me wanted to believe her. But then, something happened that made everything even more complicated. I found out something that changed everything I thought I knew about what really happened that night. I thought I had seen the worst of it. The betrayal, the begging, the desperate attempts to win me back. I thought Sarah showing up at my workplace and my gym was as bad as it would get. I was wrong. One night, about a month after the divorce was finalized, I got a call from one of our mutual friends, Mark. He sounded hesitant, like he wasn't sure if he should even be telling me this. "Listen, man," he said. "I don't know if you even care at this point, but I think you should know something. Sarah. She wasn't just cheating on you with that one guy. There was more." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean?" I asked, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. Mark sighed. "She had a whole thing going on, dude. It wasn't just some one-time mistake like she told you. There were multiple guys. At least 3 that I know of." I went completely silent. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I had just heard. "How do you know this?" I finally asked. "Because one of the guys she was messing around with? He thought she was single. He told his friend, who told someone else, and eventually, it got back to me. I didn't want to believe it at first, but then I started asking around. Turns out, a lot of people knew. They just didn't want to be the ones to tell you." I felt like an idiot. All this time, I had been thinking it was just one betrayal, one night of stupidity. But in reality, Sarah had been living a double life. I thanked Mark for telling me, then hung up the phone and just sat there. How many times had she come home to me after being with someone else? How many times had I kissed her, held her, told her I loved her, while she was sneaking around behind my back? The rage that built up inside me was unlike anything I had ever felt before. It wasn't just about the cheating anymore. It was about the lies. The manipulation. The fact that she had let me believe we had a happy marriage while she was out doing God knows what with God knows who. For the first time since this whole nightmare started, I felt something stronger than pain. I felt relief. Because now, I knew with absolute certainty that divorcing her was the best decision I had ever made. But of course, Sarah wasn't done with me yet. Sarah's meltdown. A few days after Mark's call, Sarah showed up at my apartment. I opened the door to find her standing there, her face streaked with tears, clutching a folder in her hands. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. "Please," she whispered. "Just hear me out." I wanted to slam the door in her face. I wanted to tell her to go to hell. But a part of me, maybe out of curiosity, maybe out of some lingering sense of closure, stepped aside and let her in. She walked in, sat down on my couch, and handed me the folder. "What is this?" I asked, flipping it open. Inside were pages and pages of what looked like handwritten letters. Some were dated from months ago. Others were more recent. "I wrote you letters every day since you left," she said, her voice shaking. "I never sent them, but I kept writing. I needed you to see how much I regret everything." I flipped through a few of them. They were filled with apologies, confessions, desperate pleas for another chance. She wrote about how she had been going to therapy, how she had realized she was self-destructive, how she never appreciated what she had until it was gone. I tossed the folder onto the table. "Sarah, do you think this changes anything?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. "Do you think a bunch of letters erases what you did?" She shook her head violently, tears streaming down her face. "No, I know it doesn't. But I needed you to know that I never stopped loving you. That I was lost, that I made the biggest mistake of my life, and that I will never forgive myself for what I did to you." I stared at her, and for the first time in months, I felt absolutely nothing. "Sarah," I said quietly, "I don't love you anymore." She flinched like I had slapped her. "No, you do. You have to. We were together for 10 years. You don't just stop loving someone overnight." "I didn't stop overnight," I told her. "I stopped the moment I realized you weren't the person I thought you were. The moment I realized you never really loved me the way I loved you." She broke down completely then, sobbing into her hands, rocking back and forth like a child. But I just sat there, unmoved. Because the truth was, I had already grieved. I had already gone through the pain, the betrayal, the heartbreak. And now? Now I was free. After a long, tense silence, Sarah finally looked up at me. Is there really no chance? I shook my head. No chance. She nodded slowly, like she was finally accepting reality. Then, she stood up, wiped her face, and walked toward the door. Before she left, she turned back one last time. I hope one day, you can forgive me, she whispered. And then she was gone. Moving on, that was the last time I ever saw Sarah. I heard through mutual friends that she moved out of state a few weeks later. She deleted her social media, cut ties with most of our old circle, and disappeared. And me? I moved on. It wasn't easy. I had a lot of wounds to heal, a lot of trust issues to work through. But for the first time in a long time, I felt happy. Free. Like I could finally live my life without the weight of her betrayal hanging over me. Looking back, I realize now that Sarah's cheating was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because it showed me who she really was. It forced me to walk away from something that wasn't serving me. It gave me a chance to start over, to find real happiness. And one day, I know I will. But as for Sarah? She will have to live with what she did for the rest of her life. That's all for today's video, folks. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time for more exciting content. See you next time.